Chapters we could touch
yeah,
on.
Yeah.
That's a weird one. Like,
I'm torn on that one.
I know.
I'm torn on, like, do we do it? Do we let them know where they want to skip to, or do we make them guess? Personally, as a viewer, I appreciate chapters. The second I'm bored, I'm going to skip. If you tell me where to skip, I am more likely to go to that place rather than just jumping around and then getting bored and then leaving the video anyway. My guess is that chapters overall are net positive, because I think a lot of people interact with content the same way. It's keep me engaged, keep me engaged, keep me engaged. Okay, I'm not engaged anymore. I'm looking for a spot that's more interesting. The faster I can find that spot, the more likely I am to watch more of your content. Otherwise, I'm going to leave, especially on longer videos.
Yeah, I'm not sure my behavior is the same. Welcome back to Creator Pals Podcast. So we want to go over steps you can take after you publish a video to help that video along.
Yeah.
Or to kind of give it a boost, whether it's doing well or not well. Because sometimes there's things you want to do if it's not doing so well, but if it is doing really well and getting a lot of traction, you want to kind of keep that momentum going as long as possible. So
I am very curious about something.
Okay.
Out of anybody listening to this podcast, how many of you actually do stuff to your video post-publish? Like, are you out there making changes, or do you publish and then you just move on to the next one? I admittedly fall into the camp most often where I publish a video, and as soon as I publish, I breathe a sigh of relief and I move on. And I just don't do anything with it. Occasionally, maybe I'll swap a thumbnail or something like that, but it is rare.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good strategy for someone, especially for people who are just getting started on YouTube, to just go with your gut and then trust it. Or if you really should be thinking a little bit more critically after you publish and think, okay, what can I do to really help this video out potentially?
Right. I think a lot of people do comments, but that's not really the same thing.
Right.
I don't even know how many people are doing a pinned comment, which is a lovely option.
It is. It is.
Write your own comment.
I rarely do that on my channel.
Pin it to the top. I try to do at least that, but usually I do that kind of when it publishes. Don't often change it much. I keep an eye on title and thumbnail instead of change those.
Okay.
But that's about it.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels, as we were talking through the list of things that you can change post-publish, there's actually a pretty large list of things that you can do. And maybe we can just talk through some of them. So we have the watch next, right? Whatever you have watch next at the end of your video, you can change that potentially. Now, depending on how you worded it in your, in your little spiel at the end of the video, maybe it's harder to change that, but that is something you can adjust. You can adjust cards in your video. You can adjust title and thumbnail. You can do pinned comments. You can do descriptions. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, you can edit chunks out of your video. That's another thing that you can do post-publish.
That's another thing that I often suggest to other people who publish a video and they're like, it's not doing so well. Watch it and think like,
take this out.
Take that.
The first 2 minutes.
It's almost always the first 30 seconds to 2 minutes, something in the beginning that like the intro could start later on in the video and you're getting all this drop off ahead of time. Yeah.
So other than those things, is there anything else we're missing here that can be changed or adjusted post-publish?
Specific to the video, aside from like social media and
I think
shorts,
video specific.
Then I mean, you could add cards and did you say that already?
I said you could change them.
Yes,
but
and
adding
timestamps.
Oh, yes. Okay, let's talk through some of them. Where would out of all those things, what would you rank as probably most valuable, potentially valuable changes?
I think title, thumbnail.
Okay.
Title's like bang for your buck. It's time versus potential reward. Right. Title's up there.
Yep.
Thumbnail, if you have time and you have direction, I don't think you should just change the thumbnail because the video is doing poorly. But if you really think, I should have put this in the thumbnail, or you realize what you could have done better about the thumbnail, then definitely change it. And then I think cutting out parts of the video, honestly, especially intros. I
probably agree.
Yeah,
I think those are probably the most important. So let's talk title first.
Okay.
Let's say video's doing poorly. Like, how do you know when to change your title? And really, for me, the big question is on all of these things, how do I know when to make a change? Yeah. Because it feels like for title, like you said, the amount of time you have to put in versus the time it's going to take, to not, it's very different. It's or very little difference, right? It's going to take me 10 seconds to change the title. I don't know. It just feels like not that big of a deal. For a thumbnail, it feels like a larger commitment. How do I know when to do it?
I think it depends a lot on the specific analytics. You can't just look at the videos doing bad or not.
Mm-hmm.
You look at click-through rate.
Yep.
And compared to watch time. So if you're getting, similar watch time percentage to usual, but a really low click-through, then consider changing your title and or thumbnail. It's hard to know which one to change.
Right.
I often like to start with the title because it's easier to change than the thumbnail. And then unless I have like a really specific direction for the thumbnail in mind. Right. But even if your video is doing poorly and you have about average watch time percentage per viewer, I wouldn't say to change the thumbnail and title necessarily if your click-through is okay.
Right. I see it, what feels like all the time. Creators who in the first, 24 hours of the video, they're just swapping thumbnails like there's no tomorrow. Why do you think people do that? Do you think it's actually valuable, or do you just feel like it's almost like a nervous habit, like
desperation?
Desperation. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think so. I've been there. You put a lot of work in the video, and then especially if you feel like the video is a really good one or better than most of your videos, if people aren't watching it, it's really frustrating. You want them, you're like, trust me, this is a good one.
Right.
Just click on it.
Right.
And so you kind of try everything, especially if you weren't super happy with the initial thumbnail. That can be a little dangerous because some people don't mind. I think we don't mind because we're like used to it. We're YouTubers. We know why people do that. But a lot of people get frustrated if they click on a video they've already watched because the thumbnail and title changed.
Right.
Especially thumbnail. I see that happening a lot more now with the thumbnail tester because it's going to be showing 3 thumbnails. Right. So if you saw B or C anytime in those 2 weeks that the person was testing it, and then they ultimately settle on A, or the thumbnail tester suggests A, then suddenly you've automatically seen 2 if it shows you the video again after those 2 weeks or after it's been changed.
I think people are going to have to get more and more used to that. Right now, it's definitely something that's a little bit more maybe frustrating or annoying. But as the thumbnail tester probably becomes more widespread, I think people are just going to have to get used to clicking on a video and realizing they already watched it. The branding was just different. To me, it's more interesting, like from a strategy standpoint. I'm just thinking, oh man, they must not be doing well or something like that. Like from a YouTube strategy standpoint, they're clearly trying to make it work better, right? In most cases. So I'm very curious from that standpoint. What do you think the difference between just swapping thumbnails yourself and using YouTube's A/B thumbnail tester?
Ooh, okay.
With the tester as it stands now.
As it stands now, I don't think it works very well.
Okay.
Watch other Creator Files episodes for more on that, or Channel Makers videos. We've got a lot of content about how broken the thumbnail tester is. It's just not giving accurate results, in my opinion. And we kind of have the test to prove it. We also met with YouTube engineers, and they kind of confirmed that we were at least conducting our tests in a correct way. They said to keep testing it because they apparently have confidence in it. But I think it makes more sense to not use a thumbnail tester. And here's why. Unless you have a really, really big channel, it takes too long to get the results.
Yeah.
And so, you upload them and you have to wait for 5,000 more impressions. Now, you're getting the majority of your impressions when you first publish a video, usually. So that's going to take even longer after you've already published. Mm-hmm. So it could be over 2 weeks before you get 5,000 impressions. It could be a day. But even after those 5,000 impressions, it usually won't give you a result right away. That's the minimum before it even shows the percentages. Yeah. And then you have to still wait to get a result. And we know from our tests that even if the percentages are far off, you can't trust it. Even if one's 75 and the other's 25, you can't necessarily trust it. So I think it just makes more sense to watch it yourself, change it, take a screenshot of your analytics right before you change it so that you know where things were at. You don't have to try to remember, and then keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
And give it a little bit of time. You don't want it to be changing it every hour.
Right.
But then you don't have to wait 3 to 5 business days or 2 weeks.
Right. Yeah, I like that strategy. I like the idea of, like for thumbnail examples, like, okay, my click-through rate typically on my channel is 4%. And for some reason, this video is 2.5%. Make a thumbnail change and then see if it can go from 2.5 to 4% or
Yeah.
5% or 3.5%. Like you have something very measurable there. I think that's a pretty good strategy,
Yeah.
especially since thumbnail tester is still not working great. Hopefully someday it'll be a better option. But for now, I think you're probably better off sort of looking at the analytics, real data on your channel, and then sort of gut checking with a new thumbnail.
Another hard thing is that I think that even that can be a little misleading because so you have that maybe you see the click-through rate is lower than usual, but the watch time percentage is maybe higher than usual.
Mm-hmm.
But if the video did really badly, like maybe let's say it's a topic that nobody cares about, but you have a small core audience, 20, 100 people that are going to watch every video and watch, usually those people will watch the majority of every video. They are skewing it so bad. So if your video is so bad that only your 20 most loyal people wanted to watch it, well, then the watch time percentage is going to look amazing.
Right. Because
everybody watched a lot. So then you might think, oh, I have a great video, and it's just the thumbnail and title that's wrong, when really the video isn't good. So it's hard.
Yeah.
I think a lot of common sense, and just common sense is probably too simplistic. It's
a lot to ask.
It's yeah. It's a lot of reflection of you have to use your own judgment of, you can look at the analytics for hints, and maybe the analytics can show you what it isn't, what the problem isn't, but you don't really know for sure what the problem is, even with the analytics, because of things like that can make it really misleading.
Right.
And there's no way to know for sure with a lot of these things. So I think you just have to look at, okay, well, start asking yourself questions. Like the questions I would ask is there something really juicy in this video that they can't tell by the thumbnail and title?
Yeah.
Like, why would somebody want to watch this? And is that conveyed in the thumbnail and title? Or maybe why they want to watch it is conveyed in the thumbnail and title, but it's kind of generic. So it's like, maybe you have some unique take on this or the best take on this, but you're not conveying that in the title and thumbnail. So why would they click on that one over any other video, even if they would want to watch something like that?
Right.
Or maybe often, I think it's just the topic. We just miss on the topic, that we think people are going to care about this thing and they don't. And that's usually something where you have to mostly cut your losses, I think, especially if you didn't already find a way to present that topic in the video in a good way, because all you can do is make it more appealing in the title and thumbnail at that point. But if you already didn't present it in an appealing way in the video, they're not going to be very satisfied once they get there anyways. You almost don't want to trick people too much, even if it's not going to be considered clickbait. The marketing only helps you so much, because if they get there and they're not going to like it, that's worse than if they didn't click at all.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, what do you think about chopping out parts of your video? And before we get into that, I would be very interested also to know your thoughts, because I have some thoughts on YouTube's, I don't know what to call it, their editor. Like the thing that allows you to cut pieces out of your video, it sucks.
Yeah.
It's literally the worst. It's so slow. It's pretty clunky. It doesn't allow you to like make really detailed cuts, or like, I don't know. I just hate it. So come on, YouTube, please give us a better version of that. I would love that. I just feel like it'd be so nice if you could make more like micro adjustments or cuts, or I don't know, just sometimes when you publish something, you miss stuff, and it'd be nice to be able to sort of more micromanage some of those things and like cut them out like with a scalpel. Rather, it feels like YouTube tool is like a hammer. Just like you can't really cut out exactly perfectly what you need, but I don't know. What do you think about when to do that? Like, when should I cut stuff out? How do I know what to cut out? I know there are some little graphs that can show you where the spikes are, where the dips are, but sometimes in the dips, sometimes that information's relevant to the video, but maybe you just didn't word it very well. Maybe it is just a case where you need to cut losses there. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? I
think anything that is truly going to make the video confusing is not worth it unless you could really explain it in the pinned comment. Like, let's say, for example, you spend time giving a disclaimer, like, I know this isn't always the case, but usually it's like you could cut that and then say that in the pinned comment. Or say it if somebody argues with you in the comments. But if it's something where like the whole flow of the video isn't going to make sense, or they're going to get like very confused while watching it, you kind of have to keep it in.
Or if YouTube would just let us put text over the top or voice over the top. Like change the audio out. Like, I don't know, maybe it would be kind of silly, but for the sake of keeping the viewer engaged, it feels like YouTube should be incentivized to let us do that. Maybe there's some technological reasons why they don't let you do that, but imagine Like if you spent 25 seconds disclaiming something, what if you just like could trim that down to 7 seconds and then you could voice over and then, I don't know, put a little clip of something random just so that you could like get the information that needed to be there, like literally add something extra in rather than just taking out.
There could even be a label. Like they're doing all kinds of labels now anyways. They're like AI generated content or whatever. Put a label on it if you're afraid somebody's going to like change a video.
Right.
Because I get once they, like you could game the system if you wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to. There's probably reasons, but like, let's say you got a really viral cat video that's very entertaining and then it's getting millions of views and then all of a sudden you change it to like a sales video. That could happen.
Okay, I could see that.
Maybe they could say you can only change so much of a percentage of it, or in the middle, not the beginning, or have a label that says it's content added later. I don't know. Even little things. Just like we just need a minute of 10 seconds of fixing this thing.
Or like a little asterisk with some text. Like, okay, this is what I meant to say, you know?
Yeah, you don't have to change the whole footage. Right. Another thing I would love to see is you see the retention graph. So you see when's more, when's less, but that isn't telling you everything. Because you don't know, did people pause here? Did people rewatch here? Did people leave the video here? Or did people just skip ahead here? Because it'll look like a dip if they just skipped ahead. And I don't care if 80% of people want to skip ahead at one point and 20% of people are getting value from that part. But I do care if people are clicking off the video.
Right.
I guess I shouldn't say I wouldn't care at all. Probably care a little bit if people feel the need to skip. But it's not the same thing.
Right.
Especially with decisions on whether to cut something or not.
Yeah.
What other thoughts do you have?
On that specifically, I don't know. There's been a couple times where I've gone in to cut some stuff, but it was so clunky I just gave up. Honestly. It just was so slow. And maybe that was like a one-off experience, but it just was not working.
Yeah.
And so I just gave up. Other than that, I don't really have any. I would just say cut if there's like 10 or 20 seconds, you go on this like side rant and it's just like obviously has nothing to do with the video and it's hurting, like making people click off, then just get rid of it. Like, but I would just say don't get crazy with the scissors, you know, like you don't have to go crazy and try and cut everything. You know, you don't want to end up hurting your video on accident even more than it's already being hurt.
Interesting. That's probably wise. I would tell people go crazy with scissors.
Really?
Because I think that, and I could be wrong, I think that most people are going to be attached to the content too much and too afraid to do it anyways. Like their version of going crazy might be our version or any other person's version of that doesn't need to be there. But we get attached to our own content. So we're like, I need that.
It would be cool if YouTube, like with their little retention graph, like you said, if 80% of people skipped rather than, or like fast forwarded or whatever, like if YouTube could recommend like a cut, like cut this 10 seconds out and like maybe their AI could do it. Like just click yes. And then it just trims it out. That would be pretty cool. Like you could watch what it would look like before you actually cut it. So I said, we would recommend cutting this. And then you could watch what it would look like if you use the tool. Yeah.
If you haven't used this tool, it's in YouTube Studio. And it is very clunky. Like it not only takes a long time to do it while you're actively trying to cut the thing, but then it also has this loading time of like sometimes hours. Yeah, where it's like working on it. Like it's updating. Yeah. And you check back like 4 hours later and maybe it's done. That's rough.
Yeah. Hate that. Okay. Other things that you can change post-publish. Pinned comments.
Yeah.
This one's pretty simple. I mean, we've talked about like if your video is not doing well, obviously getting more people to engage on your video is a sign of a good video. So obviously having a good video is the key here, but if in fact you're getting fewer comments than normal, having just a better engaging pinned comment can be really good.
Yeah.
A lot of times in our pinned comments, we'll give people a reason to comment, you know, ask them a question. Did you agree with us? Did you disagree with us? Maybe that doesn't seem to be working well for the specific video. Maybe you need to ask a totally random question or say, what do you hate most about this? Like, I don't know, just change it up. If it's not working, if you're not getting any responses to your pinned comment, that might be a good reason to change it.
Sometimes I think it's fun, and we don't do this very much. I wish we did more, to pin somebody else's comment. So if somebody else makes a comment that's like getting a bunch of likes and a bunch of conversation under it, pin their comment, jump in the conversation in the responses, and then you're getting more engagement.
Right.
It doesn't have to be your pinned comment.
That's a good point.
Now, when the video first publishes, put your own pinned comment up there. But later on, you can switch the pinned comment.
What do you think about cards, or we'll say cards and watch next? Because it feels like if you did a good job planning your video, you most likely won't want to change cards or watch next. But
Yeah.
we know watch next is a pretty good, important indicator for YouTube. It shows people are watching more of your content. They're staying longer. I don't know. Do you think like it'd be better? Do you think you'd be better off making more generic watch next? Like if you like this one, I know you're gonna love this one. Like that sort of thing. Versus today we talked about blah blah blah, and if you want to know what we think about X Y Z or whatever, I don't know. Like what would you say is the best way to approach that? Because you can technically change it after the fact. Would you be better off not leaving yourself that flexibility and just having a really strong one, but maybe you get it wrong? I don't know. What do you think?
I think a strong one is better.
Okay.
And potentially something where you have an out in the future. 2 ways would be trimming the end. If it's natural enough, the way you say the end, you could trim the end where you say, watch this video about super specific thing here that maybe you want to unlist that video or you don't think it's a relevant video anymore. You could trim the end. And then you can still put a card on the screen that pops up even though you're not saying, here's a new video to watch next. Not as good, but
good point.
You don't have to not have a card at all. Another thing is there's kind of an in-between, I think, where I hate when people just watch this video next. Like maybe it's because I know that they don't even know what video is showing up there.
Right.
When if I didn't do YouTube, I wouldn't know that. Right. But what my favorite are when people are expanding upon but to really understand this, you have to watch this because it also tells you how to execute it, or they're making it feel like the current video you're watching isn't even complete without the
It's almost like a part 1, part 2 without it being a boring part 1, part 2.
Right. And then you're like, I have to click this one because this information I just watched doesn't do me any good unless I watch this other one. But you can be a little more generic about that. So like in our case on Channel Makers, we could say to really perfect your thumbnails, watch this video next. We're not saying the exact title of the video in case we change the title.
Right.
We're not even saying anything too specific to where if we made a different thumbnail video or wanted to change it to a different thumbnail video we already had, we could do that. And that gives you a little more flexibility, but you can still kind of tie it into a compelling reason that they want good thumbnails or something like that. So I like that.
What about the feature? YouTube has the best for viewer.
Yeah.
The watch next best for viewer. Number one, how does YouTube know? And do you think that YouTube is more likely to be right than we are for the individual viewers?
I don't know. I think nothing can compete with marketing. So if you really market your next video and give them a reason they need to watch it, especially if you have a pretty tight topic,
right?
Then I think nothing beats that. If you have a channel with a lot of different topics and maybe you're not sure, maybe the video you just made is kind of different than most of your other topics. So you're I don't know what other video they're going to want to see. Then I think the best for viewer would be a good idea. And a lot of times if I'm not sure, I'll do both. I'll be watch this video next or this one, or the best for viewer kind of thing.
Sure.
What do you think?
I like the idea of best for viewer, but as with all YouTube tools, I would love to know how they are getting that metric. How do they know what the best is? Is it just based on their general topical preferences? Is it based on the other stuff they've watched on my channel? If they haven't watched something else on my channel, does YouTube just pick my most popular video? What is YouTube, how are they calculating? That's what I want to know. I think it's a good idea especially if you didn't do a good job planning it. If you didn't do a good job planning it, then sure, it's better than nothing. Right. But in most cases, I think you're right. I think if you have really good marketing, you have a really good reason to draw them into the next video, then definitely that's better in probably every case. Yeah,
especially if you don't say anything about what's next in the video.
Yeah.
I don't even think your own judgment is probably as good as YouTube's algorithm. Because let's say for us, they're watching a video about thumbnails and we have another video about thumbnails. Well, you could say that they like learning about thumbnails, so they'll like this other thumbnail video, but they also just watch the thumbnail video.
Right.
So maybe they want to watch something else, especially if it's all related. Other YouTube strategy is pretty closely related. If you care about making good YouTube thumbnails,
right,
it's not out of left field. So usually if you're not giving them a compelling reason why this next video is a good one for them, best for viewers, probably better than our guesses.
Right. Did we miss any of them? I feel like we did, but I don't remember.
Chapters we could touch on.
Yeah.
That's a weird one.
I'm torn on that one.
I know.
I'm torn on do we do it? Do we let them know where they want to skip to, or do we make them guess?
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally, as a viewer, I appreciate chapters. The second I'm bored, I'm going to skip. If you tell me where to skip, I am more likely to go to that place rather than just jumping around and then getting bored and then leaving the video anyway. My guess is that chapters overall are net positive because I think a lot of people interact with content the same way. It's keep me engaged, keep me engaged, keep me engaged. Okay, I'm not engaged anymore. I'm looking for a spot that's more interesting. The faster I can find that spot, the more likely I am to watch more of your content. that specific piece of content.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to leave, especially on longer videos. If I'm watching a longer video, like a long tutorial or a webinar style video or a podcast style, I may be interested in the guest. I may be interested in the topic you guys are talking about. But if you have, an hour of conversation and you maybe go off topic or whatever, like if there's 3 or 5 minutes that are completely irrelevant to me and I'm kind of like, I'm getting bored here, I don't know if I'm going to stick around. Like if I can just scrub ahead a little bit and know exactly where to get back on track, that is going to keep me on that video. So overall, although I am torn on it still, I do think I lean to the side of it's net positive.
Yeah, I'm not sure my behavior is the same. I mean, I definitely like to skip, but I wonder if if my behavior would be the same with or without chapters. I kind of think it wouldn't.
Really?
Yeah, I guess I'm picturing Spotify. And so back in the days of CDs, I would put on a CD and I'll skip a song if I really don't like it. Mm-hmm. But it's not the same as listening to something on Spotify or even just, putting on Spotify and putting my phone down to go do something or having Spotify open on the computer. It's it shows you these other suggestions. And so then suddenly instead of listening to the song and appreciating the song, I'm distracted looking at, oh yeah, maybe there's something else I want to listen to instead. Oh, I also like this band. Maybe I want to listen to them instead. Oh, I haven't heard of them. And I'm not even paying attention to the song it's put on, which I'd probably be perfectly happy with. Right. If it wasn't suggesting that I be distracted. Mm-hmm. It depends so much on the content though. So I think a lot of times, if you have, I'm going to say mom vlog type of channel, mm-hmm. and you have general cleaning tips, and then part of it's cleaning tips that are really specific to a baby. And here's how to clean up after your baby after they threw food everywhere. Well, chapters would be helpful because part of your audience is not relevant to them. Sure. And there's a lot of topics like that where part of your video is not going to be relevant to your audience. So I think chapters are great for that. I also like chapters because it feels like you're not trying to manipulate them. Right. With chapters, when you refuse to put chapters, especially people we need chapters on this video, it's a long video. It does feel kind of I'm trying to force you to mm-hmm. watch my mm-hmm. content. Nobody likes that. So you have to think even Spotify does that. Spotify wants you to listen to the music and appreciate the music, but they're still suggesting other songs. Right. Which is a little different situation because Spotify doesn't really care which band you're listening to. Right. We want them to watch our video, mm-hmm. but obviously people appreciate features like that, even if they're more distracted. I don't know. Yeah.
I think I get where you're coming from. I think with the Spotify thing, where there's other suggestions, I think of that's same on the YouTube platform, right? Yeah. You have videos on the side, you have videos below. Even now with YouTube's new setup that they do, you can see even more videos right below the video you're watching. So I feel okay, the distraction's already there. I think imagine Spotify without the scrub, on the song, you can scrub through. Imagine they took that away. It's if once you start it, you're locked in. You would hate that, right? But, and obviously you're probably not skipping to a specific spot in the song or a specific verse. They're not giving you those chapters of the song. But I like what you said. It feels like you're on the side of the audience when you give people chapters. And to me, they almost also feel like little hooks. It's if you do a really good job, maybe it's not super descriptive. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But it's almost here's what you have to look forward to. If you're going to skip, great. Here's where you can skip to. But if I can kind of mouse over the different chapters and see, okay, at minute 28, I can look forward to this. At minute 30, I can look forward to this. It almost gives me a little bit more of a reason to stay. And I find myself doing that more on podcasts where I like the guest. I'm not really going to skip around. I may be a little bored with what they're currently talking about, but I know that they're going to get to something I'm interested in. So it's almost like a little hook that keeps me there. I think a lot of people probably interact with it different ways, but overall, I think I lean pro chapters, right? Even though I never do them on my videos.
I know we don't do them on channel makers. We're talking about doing more. Rarely, we sometimes do them, but we want to do more. I think I'm the same way. I'm kind of lazy and well, maybe it'll hurt anyways, and then don't do it. I think if you get really good at it, lazy chapters are maybe worse than no chapters, but if you're really good at making each chapter sound good, people aren't going to want to skip any of the chapters. Yeah. It's almost like designing a video title. Yes. In each chapter. Another thing I want to play with, we talked about, is kind of goofy chapters, Nathan's favorite part, or can you use emojis? What if we just did all emojis? I think
you can, although there's this one channel I was actually just looking it up to see if I could find it. It's the Caleb Hammer YouTube channel, and they do chapters Let me just see if I can pull up an example here. And they do goofy chapters.
Oh, really?
Like that. Yes. It's a financial audit show. So they're looking at people's finances. So this lady, he's looking at her finances. One of the chapters is she has no excuses. Another one is holy spending. Another one is, does she actually regret her choices? You know, like they're not super descriptive of what they're talking about.
It's almost like narration. Like
it's like little narration, but it's like
a sports narrator.
Yeah, here's one. She seriously got robbed. It's like, okay, to me that feels like a little bit of a hook. It's like, okay, what are you talking about? There's not enough context that I really would probably want to skip there without getting all the other context of everything beforehand, but it's curious. Here's one. Leave him. Okay, this is a financial audit show. What are you talking about here? You know, like
interesting.
It's curious to me. And then some of them are like her job and income and that sort of thing. It's like some of them are a little bit more on the nose, but then some of them are a little bit more crafted, I think, to create some intrigue, but not give you all the details so that it would make total sense for you to just skip there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A little bit of a mix. I kind of like it. Well, I think those are most of the things that you could do post-publish on a video. Obviously, depending on if your video is doing well versus not doing well, might change the way that you approach some of these changes.
Yeah.
But
really curious to hear how many of you do any changes.
Yes.
And which changes you do.
Right.
And how you interpret your analytics. Because it's tricky, like we talked about. And I'm curious if you're like, if you feel like you have a good understanding of them, or if you have tricks to know, like, well, I know that this analytic means this. If they all interact in so many ways. If you look at 3 or 4, that could tell you something different than looking at 2. So interested in any other opinions.
For sure.
Yep. All right. That's just a trick to get you to comment like we talked about.
Yeah. This is our engagement. Please engage.
We'll cut this out if it doesn't do well.
We'll see you guys.